Hi, welcome. So in the last video, we looked at the first visualization package for data analysts, which was Matplotlib. And in this video, we are going to look at Seaborn. So Seaborn is really very interesting because with just one line, you're able to do a lot, whereas you'll be writing several lines of code with Matplotlib. So you definitely see why people love to use Seaborn, and also for the fact that Seaborn assumes what you want, assumes the styling you want, and most of the time what it assumes is exactly what you wanted. So let's just go straight to the video and look at Seaborn. So here I'm going to import numpy, matplotlib as pipe, matplotlib.pyplot as plt, pandas Seaborn, because if you remember in the pandas video, we use numpy to support pandas for the non values, and also pandas can help matplotlib, and matplotlib can support Seaborn, as you would see. So you don't forget to add the matplotlib inline, because remember it's going to make the charts that you plot to be inline and also to be responsive. So we can import Seaborn as SNS. You can give it any name, but this is what we mostly use. So you popularly see it called SNS. So now Seaborn has already inbuilt data sets. So let me just first run this line. So we are going to see the list of the data sets that it has, and then we are going to use one or two of these data sets to be able to show some of the interesting plots that Seaborn has. So you see data sets like this: attention, brain networks, car crashes. So you can see car crashes. We are going to look at car crashes, and then also tips. So this data set tips, so you can always take time and explore these data sets. So let me just show you. Let's bring in the car crash. So we can just say crash data frame equal to, we are going to go sns.load. So we'll load that data set now from SNS, which is Seaborn data set, and then we just pass in the name. So if you want to look at tips, you can also just pass in tips here, exactly as it is written here. So if you see here, exactly as it is written here, what we are going to pass here in here. So when we run this now, let's see how it's going to be. So crash underscore df, when we run it, this is the data set we have. So we could just do a dot head just to make it shorter, like we've seen. And this is what we have. So there's the speeding, alcohol, not distracted, no previous insurance premium, insurance losses. You can always go and look at these data sets in more detail. But for now, let's start showing you how simple it is to plot with Seaborn. So I'm going to start with the dist plot. So it's actually called a distribution plot. And you'll see that the advantage of Seaborn is just with one line, it does so much for you. So sns.distplot, and then you pass in now the crash underscore df. Then we index now this not distracted here. So I'm going to index this, and let's do a dist plot for it and see. So here, and then we run it. So as you can see, it has an interesting plot. This is the histograms here, and then we also have the density here. So, and it already labeled it for you. Otherwise, with matplotlib, you would have to do an plt.x label to get this. So, and it gives you color. It already does lots of things for you, which is interesting. Now, another plot which you need to see is the joint plot, which is interesting. Seaborn. So again, it's just one line, sns.joint plot, just as it is like that. And then the only thing you need to know is you need to pass in an x value. So we can pass in this speeding as the x, and then we can also pass in alcohol as the y. So we want to plot joint plot. As you would see, it will give us a correlation between speeding and alcohol, for example. So let's go to y equals to, and then we'll just type in alcohol here. Now we can go on to the data. We need to pass in the data. Which data set are we using? So we tell Seaborn we are using the crash df. So there's a time we could say we are using the tips database. So here we can say we want a regression line, a kind. So we want it to give us a regression. And when we do that, we have this joint plot, which shows you clearly that there is a positive strong correlation between speeding and alcohol. and it also gives you the distribution of speeding up here and distribution of alcohol to the right here. So you can see already if they are positively skewed, negatively skewed. So that is joint plot. Very interesting. Pair plot is another one that you want to see. Pair plot, and again with Seaborn is just one line again. sns.pairplot, pair plot. Then you go to crash underscore df and we run it. So we are going to get a very interesting plot which can be used for your correlation, just to see if there are any correlations between some of the variables. So it's just with one line you have this. Now let's wait and see. It's loading. It's going to come up. As you can see here, these are your different fields. So you have your speeding here, and then you have insurance premium. So you could check speeding is not really strongly correlated with insurance losses, but when you start going up, you see the speeding is strongly correlated with alcohol, which we have already seen. So you can see already variables that are strongly correlated here, and then you know what to do when you're building your model or in your analysis. So you can also do some styling with Seaborn. So let's just do some styling here. So we could decide to say SNS, for example, dot set style. So you decide, you set the style, and you say you want a white or black, or so there's a white style, and then you now use matplotlib, which is PLT. Remember here, if I go back up here, this is PLT. So again, you see they communicate with each other, so it's good to know both, but then you might be using more of Seaborn because of its ease of use. But whatever you want to use will be okay. Both of them will do the job. So figure, and then now you might now add the fixed size. So matplotlib is going to help to increase the size. So let's just put an 8 here. 8 and 4, for example, is going to increase the size of the chart. And then we can also do another SNS dot set context, and then we say paper, so we can set to get the paper context. And then now we can even decide on the font that I want our scale, the font size to be for, like the y-axis. How big do you want the labels to be? And then now you can now do your joint plot. So you can do sns.jointplot, let's go back here. So we had it here, so we'll just get this, copy this and paste. Now we've done some styling on it, so let me just paste it. Let's run it and see. So you can see the size here. So for example, let me just take this to 1.9, for example. Let's run it. As you can see, the size changes here. So these are some styling you can do with your Seaborn. So let's look at our common chart, which is the bar chart. How do we plot it in Seaborn? We already saw it in matplotlib. So let's see how we do that. So the bar plot. So here it's just simple, like the name is, and one liner still, sns.barplot. And then we can just say x equals to sex. So I'm just going to use the tips database here. So I'm going to refer it when it's the time to pass in the data. So the tips database has the total bill and sex. So we want to see total bill per sex as histogram, and then as a bar plot. And then now we refer now to the data directly. So it's going to go get the data because it's part of the inbuilt data set in Seaborn. So we can also say the estimator is equals to np.median. So if you see this again, we are using numpy here. Remember np again here. np is numpy. So remember, so these are the 4 packages that you really need to be good at to be able to do very effective data analysis work. So your bar plot is made up of an x, which is sex, y is total bill, then your data is tips df, then your estimator is np.median. So if you run that, Okay, you now get your tips df. So let's bring in our tips. Let's bring in our tips here. So let me just bring it down here. From here, if you remember, we got the crash. So let's bring in our tips. So here, we bring it here. So paste that here. And then instead of that, we call in, as you see here, because we had the names here, all the names of the data here, tips here. So this, we got car crashes from there as well. So let's call this now tips. Then we'll run it. So let me bring this here and paste it, tips. Then we can now also call this tips df here. So we can call it tips df. And again, if you wanted to take a look at it, you could go and see tips underscore df dot head, first few elements, and then you'll be able to see that we have the sex, we have the total bill here. So if you run this now, you get your bar chart exactly as you expected. So let us, and it gives you the colors, very interesting, male, female, already labeled here, sex here, total bill. So that's the beauty of Seaborn. And you can also get a count plot. So we go to sns.countplot, count plot, and then you give the x value equals to sex, data equals to tips underscore df. So if you run it, you get your count plot there, and then you have so many interesting plots you can do. So Seaborn is really very flexible. There are lots of things you can do, so you just explore them, and the key thing about them is just one liner. You have the sns.heatmap, which is just one line, and it's going to give you a heat map. You have the sns.boxplot, which is just one line, and it's going to give you box plots for all the categorical variables in your data. So I hope you've been able to see how easy it is to use Seaborn to do your visualizations, and you've also been able to see how Matplotlib comes to support, NumPy comes to support. So learning these 4 packages is very interesting for a data analyst or a data scientist. See you next video. Wish you good data luck.